It was about 15 years ago when I was doing my degree course. I based my whole degree on the honeybee, and it started by I saw an observational hive, and I was so fascinated by the bees and the scientific side of the bees that I decided to do my artwork based on them. So I started to include things like the figure of eight shapes, circular shapes in there to show the dance of the honeybee. I did become a beekeeper myself for a short period of time for the purpose of studying them, but ever since then I'm still connected with different beekeepers, and they let me come and have a look at their bees, and I take photographs, but mainly I do work from specimens themselves, dead specimens of bees, and have a real good look at them and produce the work. But I was particularly inspired by the artwork of Graham Sutherland, because he did a series of etchings based on the honeybee, and that also inspired me quite a lot. Well, the actual process I use is of layering monoprints. So I start off with a large sheet of steel, and I roller ink onto the steel and then print it through my press, my etching press. But I don't just do one layer, so once I've done that I have to let it dry for a few days, and then I have to produce another layer and print over the top, and then I do probably 2 or 3, maybe sometimes 4 or 5 layers of printing, but I combine it with painting as well, straight onto the paper. So it's a mixed media in a sense, of a bit of printing and a bit of painting. Use a lot of rollers, stencils, paper cut stencils as well, or you can just work into the ink with rags and your fingers to make marks into the ink, and then that all gets transferred once you print it. But as I said, to create a lot of the painting element of it, I do paint. Once the print's finished, I'll paint on it. So it's got several layers of print and a bit of painting in it as well. You definitely need a press for it, because I soak the paper, and the ink has to be transferred from the plate to the paper. So you have to use the press, really. Some people do monoprints where they hand burnish them, but I tend to find I like the ink to really sink into the paper to create all the textures I need. So I do have to use a rather large etching press to do that.
Is that a similar process that you use?
It is a very similar process. It's still using smaller metal plates which have had the colour rollered onto them, but I'm using paper stencils, also with ink rollered on, and then it's just a combination of printing them in different ways, really, with different colours, and you can get a lot of different variations. These pieces here, they're etchings, so they're a totally different process of starting with a copper plate, and then you have a ground put onto the plate. You use a sort of a tool to scratch your image into the plate, and then you etch it in acid. And then once it's been etched in acid, the actual image is engraved into the copper, and then you can apply your ink and put it through your press. But the great thing about etching is I can print it many times. Sort of makes my life easier.
How would you work up from these drawings to start with?
Yes, I've worked from real bees, but I've drawn straight into the ground on the actual metal plate itself. So it is like, it sort of gives the impression of a drawn image. But I tend to hand colour. As I'm printing it, I put a little bit of colour on as well.